Our guest is Busia Senator OKIYA OMTATAH. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning to you, my brother.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Welcome to the hot seat. Like we told the previous senator who was here, this is the show that does the RL. It's called what?
And O.
And O. Yes. We do represent the people. We oversight elected leaders. And we also come up with our own laws here.
You don't appropriate.
That's the only thing that we don't do. We don't appropriate.
No, we don't.
Okay.
But we come up with ideas of where the money should go. So welcome to the show. Congratulations on your election as a senator for Busia.
Thank you. Thank you.
Second time trying it and winning it.
Yeah.
Your party is the National Reconstruction Alliance.
Yes.
There are many people who have not heard of this party. So please
So
give
it's
us
a party
the
of the
background.
future.
Give us the background of this party, National Reconstruction Alliance. When people hear NRA, they think, oh my God, it's Uganda.
National Construction Alliance is a party whose membership is largely the youth. Even its officials are students. And we came to the point of forming that party when we saw what was happening in the political circles last time, whereby there was hardly any principle. People were making marriages of convenience that were largely tailored at very, very short-term interests. There was no consideration of values and the kind of things that have been lacking in this country being leadership. Not just occupation of offices, but leadership. So we sat down with like-minded people and mainly young people, and we said, let us plant the mustard seed. Let us start a new party. And because it was late in the day, we were not able to get very many candidates. But we managed to get a few candidates here and there, including myself. And so we went into the field. And we've got quite a number of MCAs. We don't have any MP in the National Assembly, but we have an MP in the Senate, which is occupied by myself. So that's basically the short story of the party. But it's a party of the future because we want to work between now and 2027 to build that party. And in 2027, we want to be able to influence national politics in a way that is progressive. We'll be totally Republican. And by Republican, I don't mean the Republican Party of the US. By Republican, I mean the ideology of republicanism, whereby the state is run strictly on the law. No public office is there for the benefit of the individual occupying it. And all are equal under the law and submit to the law. So the rule of law being the main thing we have. Public office being there to serve the needs of society, not necessarily to serve individuals. And office holders being servants of the people, having what we call the two legs of a free society, which is an independent judiciary and an independent media. Those are the two legs of a free society. For it's only where you can have a fair trial and where you can be heard. And you cannot have a fair trial if you cannot be heard. Freedom of speech. It's only when you have got freedom of speech and the right to be heard when you have an issue, that you get a free society. So we are very, very particular about that, and we want to give it a try and see if the Kenyans will buy into it.
We'll see
We
that.
are also very strong on production. Republicanism has very little room for charity. We want people to produce. And where people are poor, want to know why they are poor and give them means of getting livelihoods, creating new wealth, and not fighting to distribute what you have or what you don't have. So one of the big problems we have is that under production, we are very strong on what you would call research and development. You find if you look at the Azimio manifesto, it has no research and development. If you look at Kenya Kwanza, they have no research and development. It's like the manna from heaven is going to fall into this country and put money in people's pockets. And that's why we did not join any of the affirmations, because none of them address the issue of research and development. And that research and development is key to the National Reconstruction Party, so that we can use our universities and other institutions. And this country has been known for doing very good research. If you go down, government departments have been doing a fantastic research in the past. But of late, we see nothing of that mold. We've just become a Mtumba economy. In everything, in Mtumba. There's nothing new.
Nothing is
except for something like M-Pesa, which was supposed to be a Kenyan innovation, but which did not again benefit Kenyans in terms of who makes the money, you see. So those are the kind of things we want the National Reconstruction Alliance to look into and get down and say, this is where the rain began beating us. We have to stop being a market for other people and begin producing what we need, and also producing for other people.
There's something that you said at the very beginning, which is, what led you into forming this party with your colleagues, the National Reconstruction Alliance, and you talked about the frustration of people lacking a spine, people lacking values, and just, making political deals with a short-term vision and for personal gain. So how different then would you hope that the next dispensation actually operates? Because you're talking about now the past.
Well, what you're looking at is that there is no seedbed. None of the parties has a seedbed for developing leaders. But look at Europe. You can look at European countries, look at America, whatever. Their leaders are nurtured and developed. Here, somebody has to come up by just by pulling themselves up. Maybe somebody has lacked a job. He says, okay, there are going to be elections. Why don't I give it a chance? Yeah. So his aim is a job. But you have tried to want to look at the issues and say, within the National Reconstruction Alliance, can we have institutions for nurturing leadership? Right from there, so that there's an ideological anchor to political office. There's an understanding of what political office is supposed to do. Because politics is how things get done. The decisions politicians make that run the country. And so if you have got bad politicians, they will definitely make bad decisions and will end up in a bad place. Among the few things I quote from President Moi, the late, may his soul rest in peace, is the statement he made that siasa mbaya, maisha mabaya. Nothing could be truer than that. And so what we are trying to say is, how do we get this siasa nzuri? And siasa nzuri will begin with the leaders. Like when you look at our country, it's called the Republic of Kenya. Very few people understand the meaning of the word republic in the name of Kenya. We are not a kingdom. We are not an estate. We are not a kiosk. So we are a republic. So how do you govern a republic? You see, what were the aspirations of those founders of this country when they said Kenya will be a republic and not a kingdom? You see, so those are among the things we want to address. And personally, I felt that there was no accommodation in the other parties, and with my friends, and also personality cults.
Okay.
They would like to build a party that is beyond the individual.
Clear the air for us here. So your party did not join Kenya Kwanza or Azimio?
No, we did not.
But your party endorsed?
We endorsed the candidature of Raila Odinga, and we have defended his campaign to the hilt. So, but now things have gone the way they went.
Yep.
The Supreme Court rendered a verdict that is binding on all of us.
Yep.
So we come back and say we are going to work with the government of the day where it is faithful to the laws and the Constitution of Kenya.
So you have not joined Kenya Kwanza?
No, and we are not joining Kenya Kwanza.
Yesterday, when members of Azimio in the Senate, after you all sworn in and now it was time for election of a speaker, members of Azimio staged a walkout. You are among the senators who were left in the House and you participated in the election of Amason Kingi as your next speaker. And this is what you said after the election, of course. You said, I voted for you, but that does not mean that I joined Kenya Kwanza. I'm a member of the National Reconstruction Alliance. I'll guard my autonomy jealously. I will vote on issues and on conviction. I will not be whipped to vote on anything.
Yes, and that's the true position. That after discussing with my party members and the leadership of the party, we have agreed that we maintain our autonomy so that going forward, we can make it very clear that this is where we stand. And with the government of the day, or if Azimio has an agenda that we feel as a party is an agenda that serves this country, we'll support it. If it's an agenda that we think cannot serve this country, we will not support it. For example, yesterday, the position on the ground was very clear that Azimio did not have a candidate. So how are we going to impose that on the people of Kenya? The failure by Azimio to have a candidate, how was it going to bind me to try and maneuver and say that they should be given a chance for another candidate? How was it going to bind me? I found it that it did not make sense. And even if I was to join them and walk out and postpone the election of the speaker, would the Azimio manufacture a senator from somewhere else to give them numbers?
So they were short
Because
on numbers.
as smart as stand now, with Wetangula out, you find Kenya Kwanza will have 23 senators. You will find Azimio will have 22 senators. Okay. If I vote with Azimio, there'll be a stalemate.
Yep.
And we do not have a system whereby, which some of us were really fighting for when the constitution was being made, that the vice president ought to be a member of the Senate and to have a tie-breaking vote. Where there's a tie, the vice president would vote. But in this case, until Bungoma elects a senator, we have an even number of senators. So if an election is held the way the numbers are, there'll be a perpetual standoff. If I vote with Azimio, there'll be a stalemate.
Always be 50-50.
There'll be a stalemate, which shall not move. So what I did was...
So you're the tiebreaker.
So I will be a tiebreaker. So I looked at that reality and said, over and above that, who are the candidates we have? Is there a candidate I think can, in my own estimation, be a speaker of the Senate? And so I looked at the data provided us with the CVs. And so I looked at the CVs and I saw that Kingi had a track record as having been an MP, a minister, and all those things, and a governor. Then I also looked at the realities on the ground, that the Azimio group that had walked out did not walk away with their members from the coast. All the senators from the coast from Azimio remained in the House. So I saw that this was a situation whereby it would be a question of wasting time if I was to go anyway. And the king being able, and Azimio Senator Mongeni had raised a very, very critical issue, saying that we required to have been given various clearances from the various government departments on issues of Chapter 6 as regards all the candidates, which were not provided. But the response of the clerk satisfied me, because the clerk said, under this, I don't remember the standing order, was it number 5 or number 3? He does the background check. And whichever candidate is there has all those integrity issues answered. So if that question had not come and the question of integrity had been raised with no rebuttal from the clerk, I would not have voted for Kingi. But when the clerk said it is the mandate of his office,
as provided for in the standing orders of the
standing
House.
order, that you don't have to present those documents to the members, but the clerk does his background check and clears the candidates. So all candidates who are cleared, they have got all those documents, and it's there in writing. I saw no business holding out. That was the only thing that for me would have held my vote. So when that was cleared, and I know the history of this man in terms of what the institutions he has served in, so I consciously decided to give him an affirmation. I gave him a vote.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is that. But I know that some in Azmio are going to court on 2 grounds, or one is that one of integrity, that there was no, they should have provided the senators with the integrity issues. Maybe they are going to quash that section, I don't know. But whether that will succeed and be applied to the current speaker is something I also don't know. It might have to be maybe for next House, where they will require that the document be supplied. But the law as it is doesn't require it. The other thing that I've raised, that's going to be raised, which is equally weighty, that I also listened to keenly and made a conscious decision. Senator Kajwang raised an issue as regards the timelines. The IBC delayed to gazette nominated senators. Nominated senators are qualified to vie for the seat of the deputy speaker. By the time they were gazetted, the time for submitting nomination papers to be elected as deputy speaker had lapsed, and therefore that category
had been denied.
My litmus test in that particular case is that had Senator Kajwang come and said, I have a document here from a nominated senator who wants to run for the office of deputy speaker, but this document could not be submitted because the time, there was a time had been bad, and asked for the time for the document to be accepted, or somebody had said that have got so and so who wants to collect the forms and vie as a deputy speaker. That would for me have carried weight and said, okay, there's somebody, it's not an academic issue.
There's actually
There's a
somebody
candidate,
in the House
there's
here.
somebody in the House who has been locked out. So when that threshold was not realized, it became academic for me, because we might extend and nobody comes up. And the House has to move on. The country has a lot of things that need to be done. So on that basis, again, I decided that I would not support that motion. And we even had a discussion when there was some lobbying here and there. We had a discussion. And a candidate was not told me that so-and-so, a nominated senator from Azimio or a nominated senator from Kenya Kwanza would like to be a deputy speaker. And there's nobody coming in. And you know, even the deputy speaker sailed through unopposed, which means Azimio did not have a candidate.
They didn't have a candidate anyway.
You say not have a candidate anyway, so there's nobody even on the cards. So why would we hold up the House in a situation whereby it was clear that candidates were not coming. The candidate we had in Azimio, Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka, whom I even met the day before, he lobbied for my vote. I listened to him. Only to wake up in the morning and read in the papers.
He has withdrawn.
He has withdrawn. And I left Parliament buildings. I left whatever I was doing during the induction. And he called me, and being a senior politician, I left whatever I was doing. I rushed to Serena. I met him. I listened to him for about 20 minutes. Then I came back, only to wake up in the morning and find that His Excellency had changed his mind. And then here you hear a situation whereby again you have a deputy governor. There's no candidate for deputy governor.
Speaker.
For deputy speaker, sorry. So it becomes a bit untidy.
So you made a conscious decision.
I made a conscious decision that the country needs to move on.
Right.
And in this situation whereby Azimio has no candidates, let us look at which candidates there are. So he didn't even vote for the deputy speaker. He sailed through. But I'm also sure that had they waited in terms of procedure, because in the House, what I'm beginning to learn as I was been reading, even if you look at my eyes, I've been reading the standing orders. When you look at them, as I have read most of the night, when you look at them, you cannot discuss a motion that is not on the floor. So the motion of the deputy speaker, if they had only been patient and come into the office, and then when they were now raising the issue of the deputy speaker, began raising those points. At that point, we could really have engaged. But nobody was there to move the motion because they had walked out. And so in the motion, when the deputy speaker was called,
they were not there.
There was silence. When the names of the candidates were read, only one candidate was emerged. See?
That's already showing us the kind of representation that we're going to have for the people of Busia in the Senate, and that's why we are here. You're here today. We are actually, our topic for this is OKIYA, the modern day People's Watchman. You know where the People's Watchman tag, of course, came from, and what it represented. And that's what we're asking: is this the modern day People's Watchman? You know the work that you've been doing in terms of advocating for change and going even into litigation in Parliament, in the judiciary, and pushing through things. And now you are in the Senate. What are you going to do? What should we expect from OMTATAH 040? Let's continue that conversation after the break.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Charles.
Mheshimiwa, these fellows will not let me breathe. My first name is Charles, but I use my initials. And somehow they get tickled just because the Queen of England has passed away and her son, whose first name happens to be Charles. Why don't you use the other 4 names that the person has?
Well, if your name was Arthur, we'd have called you that. Or George. Or Philip.
But seeing as it's Charles.
Mheshimiwa, there's something I'd like to ask. I've been listening to what you're saying. I like what you're saying. It makes a great deal of sense. From what you have observed and from what you read, I have 2 questions. One, when one is in Parliament, what is the role of the standing orders and what weight do they bear when you compare what it is those standing orders are and what they dictate and what it is they dictate with reference to the Constitution?
Well, you're coming to the question of the hierarchy of laws.
Yes.
And in the hierarchy of laws, we have the Constitution as the super law. Under the Constitution, you have got Acts of Parliament. And then under the Acts of Parliament, you have got rules and regulations, or statutory instruments, which is also legislation, but the legislation that's not done directly by Parliament, but which is delegated to other organs to make. Now, in the Constitution provides for each house to have standing orders. They are anchored in the Constitution. They are not anchored in legislation. So it requires that each house has standing orders, and the standing orders are a form of legislation. They are a law that, for as long as they are there, then they have to be obeyed as the law. If you don't want to obey them, you either need to get Parliament to repeal that law, or the courts to declare that law unconstitutional. Yeah. As we stand today, the standing orders are the law for conducting business in Parliament. There's no other law for conducting business in Parliament other than the standing orders, which have a constitutional anchoring. And that's why I was saying that the issue of Chapter 6 was weighty. But when the clerk clarified that it is him who clears and all the candidates who are on the table had met the threshold, I had no business doubting him. So that's where it was. But there's also something, there's also a sense of urgency today. That I don't want His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, when he begins counting his 100 days on, is it Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah, then of course under the Constitution we can't count Tuesday, we begin on Wednesday. He made a long list of promises that he's going to implement immediately he gets in office. And I don't want him to say that, like Uhuru used to say that there's one man in this country who cannot let me do my work. He's always getting court orders here and there. I don't like to give that benefit to William Ruto. And that's why we need to get out the preliminaries of getting the speakers and getting whatever, so that from Wednesday, the price of gasoline, the price of unga, all these things that were, because there is something called electoral fraud. And in my understanding of electoral fraud, it's not just playing around with ballots. It's also making false promises. If I tell you that if you make me the Senator of Busia, I'm going to cut a piece of the moon and hang it in every home so that nobody will ever see darkness at night. And I don't do that. I've committed an electoral fraud. So I don't want to be able to stand in the way of His Excellency, William Ruto. Let us remove all these small issues away. Give him all the support he needs to implement his very flowery agenda. And I would like it to work because it will benefit the people of Kenya.
Sure.
So there's that sense of urgency in some of the decisions I'm making, so that we don't stop the president-elect, when he becomes president, from implementing his very, very good agenda for this country.
Senator, who keeps then these promises, or who keeps the maker of the promises in check? I mean, before your time as a senator now, you were very active in making sure that matters of the Constitution were followed by way of going to the courts to establish some of these things, to stop certain things from going on in the way in which they were, which earned you your stripes that you have today. Now, who's responsible for seeing that maybe if in the event that some of those things that were promised then do not happen, who then is responsible for keeping him and the administration of government in line?
That one you have to look at it in terms of not having adequate laws. And you see, one of the things I've had was when I decided to join the majoritarian institutions, I look at it as a river flowing from the mountains down to the lake. Yeah? Then somewhere in between, upstream, somebody constructs a dam to irrigate his golf course or whatever and whatever. Then the water does not flow down. Now down here, you can do a few things. You can say, okay, let us distribute this water equally. Let us limit the amount of water you can use when taking a shower. You'll not use a bathtub, but you'll use a shower. Or you'll not use a shower, you'll have to use a bucket. And things like those. You'll stop using flush toilets. You'll have to dig pit latrines. You do all that. That's what you have been doing as activists.
Yes.
If you do all that and then it's not enough.
Because the
It
water,
gets
the
to a-
dam is still.
Yeah, the water is not there. The fact is that the water is not enough.
Yes.
However much you try to deal with it. But there's somebody who has built a dam upstream where he's trapping the water that's supposed to be flowing down. The solution is to go upstream and destroy that dam. And so some of us going into parliament, I'm consciously going there to destroy the dams that are in parliament.
So that the
And
water can
through
flow.
legislation, we want to get appropriate legislation that will be able to make some of these things fruitful. If we don't say, and I would want to build partnerships and see that we are able to deal with things like in health. Health is a devolved function. But about 80% of the money is controlled in Nairobi. Down there, the governors have nothing to do. So we need to put up a proper health commission for standardization of services across the counties, so that when I'm in Laikipia and I'm in Mandera, the level of service delivery is the same. The curative services are with the same level and what have you, and are run professionally by doctors, and the funds for health go to the governors. So that this thing like leasing equipment through the national government, whereby something costing 100 shillings is being costed at 1 million or 2 million shillings, has to stop. So that dam has to be destroyed. And one of the things I'm really going to do is to fight and get proper legislation to entrench devolution. To entrench devolution in society, just like the Constitution has entrenched it, to operationalize that entrenchment in society. So that those kind of things. And that's why even on the electoral laws, you have seen what has happened. We also need to address it and see what kind of things need to be dealt with to make sure that the next elections are verifiable. The next elections, as easy to tell a winner. And if somebody loses, he has lost. He will not have any room
will be
to...
clear.
Yeah, it will be clear. Yeah, not to be depending on a pronouncement
Of 7.
of 1 or 2 or 7. You see, let the victory be clear from day one. So those are the kind of things that need to be engaged with.
On
And
that issue of health, just to
Yeah.
take you back a little bit. Today is Friday. We usually have a health conversation, and Dr. Mercy Korir will be joining us at 9. We've actually talked about this before, where you say that, yes, one of the things that we need to see is the proper devolution of funds
Yeah.
for health. 80% of thereabout is still being held at the national level, yet health is a devolved function. What is the solution to this? Would it be like what? Abolishing the health ministry? You say
No.
creating a commission at the national level? What else?
we not, you can't abolish the health ministry because the health ministry is for policy. But I personally believe that during when we were doing the constitution last time, there was the idea that we are going to form a health commission. And I know that in the report of the committee of experts, it is stated that they could not form the health commission and the other commission because there would be too many commissions in the constitution. But Parliament undertook to implement it within some period of time to set up a proper health commission. We need a health commission to standardize the work environment for doctors, to standardize the quality of service delivery, so that when you walk into a public institution of whatever level, you walk into it and you realize that it is proper. We also need a health commission to manage the distribution of resources. Because there's been this madness in the counties that every county wants to put up a Kenyatta National Hospital. Totally irrational. Because it's irrational because to equip that hospital and to man it is no light feat. So you'll end up with a lot of white elephants. But so that the referral system, maybe counties will need to be put into clusters. Maybe under the old provinces or some other formula, so that the centers of excellence can serve a wider region.
Yeah.
Because some of these very top high-level expertise may just be required once in a year. So you're not going to keep 47 highly qualified medical personnel with heavy, very expensive equipment waiting to get a patient for in 2 or 3 years' time. So we need to look at the referral system under the devolved government so that we create a referral system that is both county-based and largely regional, and then eventually it feeds into the national. Because so that Kenyatta, the Jomo Kenyatta, the Kenyatta University Hospital, the Kenyatta Hospital, Moi referral, become centers of excellence. Another thing we need to push through is that you look at every county, there's this thing of every county going for a teaching hospital.
Yeah.
Again, I come back to my position. We also need research hospitals where research is carried out on patients. So the patient can come in and you say, we'd like to carry out research on this ailment. And the patient concedes that he can try out the new kind of medicines or the new ideas that are there can be tried on them and see how they behave. So we also need to move to the level of having research and teaching hospitals. So that a teaching hospital should preferably incorporate a component of research. And again, you see my anchoring in research.
Yep.
So that you can develop new ideas and new products to deal with the ailments. So that's among the areas that I want to also to see that if I could talk to fellow legislators in the Senate, to get a meeting of minds and push forward and see that we get proper laws that will devolve health, that will secure the funds within health, and make sure that this money is used properly. Not necessarily giving the money to the governors, maybe come up with a mechanism through which the money gets to the hospitals directly. And they've got accounting officers there and stuff like that. And the totality of all this effort should have a national position. So we build in capacity at the end of the day that is national, so that we don't do a lot of duplication in one area and then we find that some areas have been neglected. So it's an area that needs a lot of engagement, and it's something I really, really want to put my mind to and lobby my fellow senators to see that we entrench that. Another one is agriculture. It's devolved, but everything is still in Nairobi. You see, we need to get to a position whereby we restore proper. We give our people the capacity to engage in what we call kilimo biashara or modern farming, where people farm for food and also for profit. And just like today when I look at the village I come from, when we were small boys, you could simply hit the ground with one djembe and you get a lot of earthworms. And you go with your hooks and you go fishing with those earthworms as bait. Today, if you dig, and I even tried it when I was home over the weekend. I was digging somewhere and I could not see a single earthworm. You see, which means the soil is dying. And these are areas that need a lot of resources to be invested, maybe to do a soil mapping across this country to see what kind of interventions are required to restore the health of the ground. So that people, even if you are going to peasant farming, it can be productive. Today, you see a lot of people suffering. Even if you drive along Mombasa, going to Western, actually drive during the day, you look at the farms, as you just begin from that escarpment, as you go down, you'll see people growing maize that is just buffed, and it's year in, year out.
Yep.
And this is labor that people are putting in, and these are people who have no option.
Yep.
What do these people need to put in that soil to be able to get a good crop? Or what crop do they need to grow in that soil to get a harvest?
Yeah.
You see, this is the kind of thing that this is the kind of discussion that needs to be done at a national level, so that peasant farming, and we are largely a peasant economy, so that peasant farming can be rewarding.
Do you think that there's a desire for there to be a meeting of minds and consensus then amongst legislators today from where you see it? Because what you're talking about, to the person who's listening to you, it makes sense. But then the fear has always been that there is a large number of would-be legislators who go into the National Assembly without the intent of doing what they ought to do. So from where you are, is there enough in terms of this consensus of minds to come together and start to do some of the things that you're speaking of?
Yes, I think there is, because since I got, I've been speaking to quite a number of senators, and all of them have got good intentions. I've spoken to senators. So far I've spoken to about 3/4 of the members of the Senate, trying to introduce myself and to know them and where they come from. And these things I try to have discussed some with some of them, and there are also things that are open to. But these are sober people who I think have got the good intention of this country. And one of the things we want to drive is to assert the position of the Senate as the upper house. And it's the upper house because it's the one which guarantees devolution. So if we go matters of devolution and push for proper legislation in devolution, I'm seeing even the stature of the Senate being raised. Because what people don't know that in protocol, in the political offices, you come from the president to the senator to the governor. It's not the president, governor, senator.
But OMTATAH, please explain this to me, Mheshimiwa. What you say makes sense. It is clear. It is seen the world over. People have a system such as ours. But why is it that it hasn't been so?
No, the problem has been that many people have tended to look at the Senate as a stepping stone to other things.
Or as a retirement home.
Yeah, the other thing that a lot of people who came into the Senate had a history of the National Assembly. You see. Right now, I think people have got a history of National Assembly in the Senate. It's very small. Most of the people are coming either as senators who had come, first time they entered the House was in the Senate. And new people have come to the Senate. And the pronouncements of the Supreme Court on the place of the Senate have also entrenched the position of the Senate as the upper house. And so when we put in legislation, and even if you saw when I stood up on the floor yesterday in my opening remarks, I said that the time had come for the Senate to get an equal share of seats on the Parliamentary Service Commission. And that motion was, although I didn't move it as a motion, but every senator who spoke after me spoke about it, and some with more eloquence than I had placed it. Because they are more familiar with the problem than I have more familiarity with the problems than I have. So the goodwill in the Senate, I think, is there. I don't doubt that there's political goodwill. I think after we get over
what would be the challenge? Do you think allegiance to a political party would be a challenge? So, for instance, the majority today of members of the Senate belong to Kenya Kwanza, and the executive is a Kenya Kwanza executive. Some of the laws that you're proposing would be going to break the dams that have been created by the executive, that are benefiting the executive.
Yes, but I know that with the kind of promises that President-elect William Ruto is not yet president yet, President-elect William Ruto has promised he can't achieve them without breaking those dams. Yeah. So I'm sure that these kind of proposals fit into what he was trying to say. If it's bottoms up or bottom up, that bottom up idea can only thrive whereby you break the dams upstream.
So the water has got to
The water has to flow to the bottom.
to the bottom.
Yeah.
Has he reached out to you, the president-elect?
Well, I'm in a unique position whereby, even as we were in the Supreme Court the other day, when we were litigating, whatever we were litigating, I think I was the only person who had spoken to, who was speaking to Chebukati, is a personal friend. Speaking to Ruto is a personal friend. Speaking to Raila is a personal friend. The only thing I was pursuing there is what I conceived was to the truth, which the Supreme Court said was not. I had my ideas were dislocated. So I said, okay. Okay, that's it. So at a personal level,
You speak with...
I speak with the President Ruto. We elect Ruto, and even after my election, we spoke. Right Honorable Raila, we speak. Mr. Chebukati, after he announced the results at the Bombers,
You spoke.
I think I'm among the first people he called. He called me and we spoke, because we've got a long history of knowing each other. And so, and even if you looked at my petition, I didn't attack anybody or praise anybody. I just went for what I
Stuck to
thought
your
was the
issues.
issue. Yeah, because I had all these three main players are my personal friends, you see.
Well-
So I think that if I have an idea and I floated it, it may not necessarily be fought because it's coming from OMTATAH. It may only be fought because it makes no sense. But if it makes sense, I think both Azimio and Kenya Kwanza
We'll take
will take it.
Mheshimiwa, thank you very much for joining us today.